If you're a fan of football, you've more than likely heard about the infamous Madden Curse. Whether it be suffering a serious injury the following season, getting caught up in a scandal, or having your career go off the rails, the majority of NFL players who have graced the cover of the Madden franchise had some type of bad luck go their way shortly afterwards. From Michael Vick fracturing his fibula in preseason just days after landing on the cover, to Antonio Brown's complete meltdown this year, the Madden cover curse rarely spares any athlete, no matter how great they are. But somehow, there's been a select few players who have been able to dodge the curse, in my opinion. This is not to be confused with breaking the curse, because even though a few players have been able to avoid it, the curse eventually pops back up and claims more victims. But before we get in who dodged the curse, we have to define what the Madden Curse is. Now, in order for something to be considered a curse, it has to inflict harm or punishment on someone or something. So in terms of NFL players, that can be anything from an injury, a scandal, the downfall of one's career, or in the case of 2011's cover athlete Drew Brees, a string of unfortunate bad luck. So with that said, let's get into the very small list of players who did in fact dodge the dreadful Madden Curse. If you are new to the channel and you are interested in more videos like these, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you never miss any of these uploads. Also, if you enjoy the video, please drop a like on it. Let's see if we could hit about 3,000 likes. It does help the video and I appreciate it very much. Now, the first time Madden had a cover athlete was Madden 1999. But you have to go all the way until Madden 2005 to find the first man who was able to beat the curse. Or at least he did, in my opinion. Now, some will say Ray Lewis was cursed because the Ravens did miss the postseason that year, and Lewis was injured and missed a good bit of the following season after that. But when you look at the entire scope of things, I don't believe the curse really affected him. The season he was on the cover, he was first team All-Pro, a Pro Bowl selection, and he still had a great season. After that year, Ray Lewis went on to make the Pro Bowl every season from 2006 until he retired. He was a first-team All-Pro in 2008 and in 2009, a second-team All-Pro in 2010, and even went on to win a second Super Bowl for the 2011-2012 season. He retired following that Super Bowl season and went out on top, the way every player dreams to leave the game. That certainly doesn't sound like somebody who was cursed to me. I think if any one thing negates the Madden Curse, it's definitely winning a Super Bowl. But even with that aside, Lewis was at the top of his game for almost every season following the Madden 2005 cover. The verdict? Not cursed. So now we have to jump ahead a few more years, as the Madden Curse rarely spares anybody. We're now in the year 2009, which means we're talking about Madden 10. Now, Madden 10 is a special case because there were two players on the cover that year, Larry Fitzgerald and Troy Polamalu. While he wasn't the worst victim of the curse by any stretch, Troy definitely suffered a little bit after landing on the Madden cover. He missed out on most of the 2009-2010 season due to injury, and while he and his team did bounce back the following year, they still did lose in the Super Bowl to the Green Bay Packers, and the Steelers haven't been back since. Polamalu went on to have two pretty good seasons after that injured year, but wound up retiring not too long after that. While he wasn't the worst case, he certainly falls in the cursed territory in my opinion. But now that brings us to Larry Fitzgerald, arguably the most likable person to ever play in the NFL. I can't imagine anybody disliking Larry Fitzgerald, it wouldn't make sense. One of the best wide receivers to ever play the game, one of the hardest workers to ever step on the football field, somebody that never really talked trash or anything of that nature, just went to work and did what he had to do every single day. It's almost as if the curse didn't have the heart to mess with Larry. The year Larry shared the cover with Troy, he racked up 1,100 receiving yards and a career-high 13 touchdowns. Since being on the cover, he's gone on to rack up over 10,000 receiving yards to add to his career total of 16,000 plus, which currently has him number 2 all-time behind only Jerry Rice. He's also racked up enough receptions to be number 2 all-time on that list as well, behind Jerry Rice once again, and he's currently 6th all-time in receiving touchdowns. He's made 4 Pro Bowls and 1 second-team All-Pro since landing on the cover. He may have never made it back to the Super Bowl, but you'd be hard pressed to argue that anybody was more successful post-Madden cover than Larry Fitzgerald. Verdict, not cursed. Speaking of individual success, that brings us to the following year's cover athlete, Drew Brees. I think this one is still yet to be determined as to whether or not he's cursed, and I'll tell you why. Sure, the season he was on the cover, he was bothered by a nagging injury and did throw a career-high 22 interceptions, but he did not miss any time due to injury, and his team still did make the playoffs. But we'll get back to the playoffs in just a minute. Since being on the cover, Drew Brees has gone on to break multiple records. He amassed the most passing yards in a single season in 2011, which would later be broken by Peyton Manning in 2013. He achieved the most consecutive games with a touchdown pass, and he also just last year became the leader in all-time passing yards. He's won multiple division titles and been to the playoffs a handful of times. But when you look at the crazy ways that the Saints have lost playoff games, it's hard to argue that Brees isn't cursed. From the Marshawn Lynch run, to the catch part 3 by Vernon Davis, to the ridiculous Minneapolis Miracle, to the most egregious no call in NFL history. That type of luck can only be explained one way: a curse. Now, Brees is currently injured this season, but the Saints do look poised to make another run when he returns in a few weeks. If he were to somehow overcome all of this bad luck and finally win another Super Bowl, I think then you can maybe argue that he dodged the curse, or at the very least he overcame it. As I said earlier, if one thing negates the Madden curse, it has to be winning a Super Bowl. And if you look at all of the individual success he's had since being on the cover, if he can somehow add another Super Bowl to that, then I think you could argue that he was not cursed. But if the Saints continue to lose playoff games in these crazy ways, then I think you could obviously say that the curse is the reason for this. So I would say that Drew Brees is still under review. Now this brings us to Madden 13 with Calvin Johnson. If there was one person you could absolutely argue was not affected by the Madden curse, it would have to be this guy. He dodged the curse so much that John Madden himself came out and made a statement about it.
Maybe we needed Calvin Johnson to play like he did, have the year that he did, and no injuries, and so there's no more curse.
Calvin Johnson had a historic season the year he landed on the Madden cover, amassing the most receiving yards ever in a single season with 1,964. He would have 4 straight 100-yard seasons since being on the Madden cover, 2 first-team All-Pro selections, 4 Pro Bowls, and also dodged serious injuries. He would then retire on his own terms, much earlier than anybody expected, but certainly not because he was forced to. The verdict on Calvin Johnson: he was absolutely not cursed. Now it's time to talk about Madden 15's cover athlete, Richard Sherman. Some say he was cursed when his team lost the Super Bowl the year he landed on the Madden cover. You remember, the one where the Seahawks needed 1 yard to win the game, and they had this guy in their backfield. But they decided to pass instead. And then this happened. Yeah, that seems pretty unlucky and very curse-like. But the fact is, Sherman was already a Super Bowl champion from the year before, and he's remained one of the best cornerbacks in the league since being on the cover. He made the Pro Bowl the year he was on the cover, and the 2 years following that. He was also first-team All-Pro during his cover year, and second-team All-Pro the following year. Now, he did suffer an injury a few years later, which caused him to miss some games during the 2017 season, before eventually changing teams to the 49ers in 2018. Currently, Sherman is still one of the better cornerbacks in the league. He's certainly past his prime, but he is still very good. He hasn't had any crazy setbacks, his career is still going strong, and the Niners are currently sitting at 8-1, the top seed in the NFC, and look like one of the more promising young teams in the league. Another Super Bowl in Sherman's future is certainly not out of the question. The verdict on Richard Sherman: not cursed. Next up is Madden 16 cover athlete Odell Beckham Jr. Another case similar to Drew Brees in my opinion. Is he cursed? I think the verdict on that is still out. For starters, the year he was on the cover was the best season of his career, totaling a career high in yards with 1,450, and he also had a career high in touchdowns as well with 13. The following year he racked up 1,367 yards, and 10 touchdowns. He made the Pro Bowl both seasons as well as second team All-Pro. It wasn't until his third season following the Madden cover that he got injured and missed most of the season. But after that, he bounced back with yet another 1,000+ yard season. His production has remained among the best at his position since being on the cover. But the funny thing with Odell is, it seems like things never have quite worked out for him. No matter what he does, the media just seems obsessed with him. They love to pick on him for every little thing that he does, from his pregame gear to his moments of frustration on the sideline. It just seems like he's always painted as the villain, even though his teammates have always called him a leader. The way the media often portrays Odell Beckham is really how Antonio Brown was actually behaving these past few months. And it wasn't really until his second season, the Madden cover season, that he started rubbing people the wrong way for simply being a little more flamboyant and passionate, so maybe you could chalk that up to the curse. He would then go on to get traded to the Cleveland Browns this past offseason, where it finally looked like he was going to be on a team chock full of talent and poised to make a run at the playoffs. But so far, the team is struggling to meet expectations that were set during the offseason. The team is currently well below 500, and it looks like the same old Browns we've grown accustomed to. And Odell isn't having the hottest year either. His yards per game are the lowest that they've been throughout his entire career, and he's only managed to find the end zone one time through 9 games so far this year. But it's not really due to a lack of talent. Baker Mayfield's having some second-year struggles, and the coaching certainly isn't doing Odell any favors either. Is OBJ cursed? The answer to this is that I simply don't know. I think we need to see how his next few years unfold to truly determine if he got cursed or not. Last but not least, we have the Madden 18 cover athlete, none other than Tom Brady. Now, some say that he was cursed because he did lose the Super Bowl that year, but the man did make it to the Super Bowl, and it was one of the best Super Bowls we'd ever seen. A ton of offense, back and forth scoring till the very end. Brady even won his 3rd MVP award that season, and then went on the following year to bounce back and win the next Super Bowl, the 6th of his career. Like I said earlier, if one thing negates the curse, it's certainly winning the Super Bowl. Not to mention, the deluxe version of Madden 18 was literally called the GOAT Edition. He's the greatest of all time. He's above any Madden cover voodoo. The verdict on Tom Brady, definitely not cursed. So there you have it. Over 20 athletes have covered the Madden series, and only 5 of them are not cursed, while 2 others are still under review. Who do you think got hit the hardest by the Madden curse? And if you disagree with anybody in this video, let me know below. I hope you enjoyed the video and found it entertaining. If you did, as always, you know the drill. Just like, comment, make sure to subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.